High above the mortal world, Olympus stood inside a ring of storm clouds where thunder rolled like drums and silver rain never fully stopped. Golden halls glowed through the haze, but the light looked strained, as if the mountain itself was holding its breath. This was the home of the gods, a place built on order, pride, and ancient rule. At the center of that order sat Zeus, king of Olympus, a powerful man with white hair, a broad golden beard, and eyes like storm fire. He ruled with calm force, but he also feared one thing above all else, and that was the loss of balance between the divine realms. On the night the trouble began, that fear became real because the crown of first lightning, a sacred relic forged from the first bolt Zeus ever shaped, cracked open on its stand. The crown did not just shine, it held the law of Olympus together, and if it failed, every god would begin to question the old order. Hera, a stern goddess with black hair and a sharp silver gown, wanted the court to remain united. Ares, a hard-faced god with red hair and armor dark as iron, wanted strength above all else. Athena, a calm goddess with brown hair and a white battle cloak, wanted truth before panic. Hermes, a quick young god with blonde hair and winged sandals, wanted answers before the situation spread. They all saw the same danger, but each wanted a different path. Zeus understood the central problem at once. If the crown was not recovered, Olympus would fracture into rival factions, the bond between divine realms would weaken, and the storm wall around the heavens would begin to open. The first crack in the crown came with a sound like 1,000 sparks snapping in the dark. Then the relic split wider, and a thin seam of black light appeared behind it, like a hidden door in the air. From that seam came a deep roar from beyond the edge of the cosmos, and the halls of Olympus shook. Athena realized the truth before the others did. The crown had not simply broken. Something on the far side had answered its power, and something ancient had started to wake. Far below the throne room, in a locked chamber beneath the cloud-stone floors, an old seal was also beginning to fail. That seal held back a dragon named Vulcan, a rebellious creature with black scales, blue eyes, and wings lined with star-like cracks. Vulcan had been trapped at the edge of the cosmos after defying the laws of the gods long ago. He did not want a throne, and he did not want worship. He wanted freedom from divine command because he believed the gods had ruled too long and had used order to control every realm. The crown of first lightning had called to him through the breach because it carried the authority of Zeus, and if Vulcan seized it, he could break the old hierarchy and rewrite the rules that held Olympus together. Zeus listened to the rising thunder, saw the fear in the court, and knew he had to act alone at first. He took his lightning spear, pulled on his bronze cloak, and stepped down from the throne with the weight of a whole world on his shoulders. Hera tried to stop him from leaving without a plan. Ares demanded war. Athena warned that the dragon was not merely a beast, but a thinking enemy with a clear motive. Hermes offered to guide Zeus through the upper winds. Zeus accepted none of it fully because the crown had to be found before the debate could become a civil split. So he descended through the storm gates, leaving Olympus behind, while the black seam in the sky widened like an eye opening. Zeus crossed the shattered heavens and entered the lower cloud roads, where the air grew colder and the thunder sounded closer to the skin. He passed broken sky bridges, burned watchtowers, and floating stone islands that drifted apart as the divine balance weakened. Every step showed him how serious the crisis had become. Lesser gods were already choosing sides, some following Hera for order, some following Ares for force, and some hiding in fear. In a sheltered hall above the clouds, Apollo, a bright young god with long blonde hair and a gold robe, kept trying to sing the storm still, but his music only trembled. In the river courts below Olympus, Demeter, a tired goddess with wheat gold hair and green robes, worried that the mortal harvest would suffer if the heavens collapsed. Even the smallest crack in Olympus had real cost because the gods did not rule a distant dream. They shaped rain, crops, roads, and sea winds for the mortal world below. Zeus realized that if he failed, people on Earth would see storms without pattern, floods without season, and fear without end. That made the mission more urgent. While he pressed onward, Vulcan moved too. The dragon burst through the growing seam between realms, not fully free, but free enough to strike. He appeared as a dark shape against the lightning, huge wings spread wide, and his voice rolled like a low earthquake. He did not attack like a mindless animal. He spoke with bitter pride and said the gods had chained the world for too long. He said the crown belonged to anyone strong enough to hold it. Then he drove Zeus back with a wave of storm breath and shattered moonstone, forcing the king of Olympus to fall into the broken sky below. Zeus landed hard on a cloud ridge near the outer gates of the underheavens, where the air smelled of rain and old fire. There he met Iris, a messenger goddess with rainbow hair and a pale blue dress who had been sent by Athena with a simple warning. The crown was not being held in one place. Varkin had hidden it inside a moving storm vault, a cage made from living lightning, and that vault was traveling through the cracks between realms. Iris also revealed a harder truth. The crown had been weakened years ago by the gods themselves because they had used it to seal away threats without repairing its core. That flaw had made it easier for Varkin to sense and fracture. This was the story twist Zeus had not expected, and it changed everything. The enemy was not only the dragon. The pride of Olympus had helped create the disaster. Zeus felt the truth hit him like cold rain. He had led with control for so long that he had stopped listening to warning signs. Now he had to do more than reclaim a crown. He had to prove that the gods could still deserve their place. He pressed forward with Iris as his guide, and together they crossed a field of broken thunder mirrors where every mirror showed a different future. In one, Varkin wore the crown and the heavens turned gray. In another, Zeus reclaimed it, but the breach remained open. In a third, the dragon and the king stood together for a single moment, holding the gate shut with shared power. Zeus did not trust that vision yet, but he remembered it. At the heart of the storm vault, he found the crown hovering inside a cage of bright blue force. Varkin guarded it from a ring of wind spirits and cracked cloud beasts, and the battle that followed shook the sky. Zeus hurled lightning spears, Varkin answered with starfire wings, and the storm vault spun out of control, dragging both of them toward the widening breach above Olympus. As the sky split wider, the war inside Olympus also reached its peak. Ares gathered fighters to push for direct force. Hera formed a council to keep command under law. Athena tried to hold the center and prevent a full collapse. None of them could fully move until Zeus returned, because the crown was the symbol that made every side feel justified. But Zeus was now trapped in a worse truth. If he simply took the crown and sealed the breach alone, Varkin would keep fighting and the storm gate would remain unstable. If he used the crown with Varkin, then the dragon might gain too much freedom. In that final stretch of this first chapter, Zeus made his first true change. He stopped acting like a ruler who needed to dominate every answer and started acting like a guardian who needed to build trust before the sky fell apart. He called out to Varkin in the middle of the storm and offered a bargain no one in Olympus had ever offered the dragon before. He promised to end the old prison rules if Varkin would help seal the breach. Varkin hesitated because no god had ever spoken to him as more than a tool or a threat. His black wings beat against the storm, his blue eyes narrowed, and for the first time the rebellious dragon looked less like a monster and more like a wounded force of nature that had chosen anger because no other path had been given. The crown of first lightning flashed between them, the breach thundered wider above, and the fate of Olympus hung in the air. Zeus reached for the relic, Varkin reached for the open sky, and together they stood on the edge of a choice that could save the heavens or break them forever. The storm roared around them, the gods of Olympus watched from above, and the next moment was about to change everything. The sky above Olympus had turned into a living wound, and every flash of lightning made the broken clouds look sharper, darker, and more angry. The gods watched from high marble terraces, silent and tense, while the wind slammed against white pillars and shook the golden doors of the throne hall. Zeus stood on the storm bridge below them, tall and rigid, with white hair whipped around his stern face, his thick golden beard glowing in the blue fire of the sky. His bright white robe and dark storm cloak snapped behind him, and the scar of the lightning crown burned faintly on his brow. Across from him, Varkin spread his massive black wings and held his ground inside the roar. He was a dragon with glowing blue eyes, star-like cracks in his wings, and storm marks across his chest, and he looked less like a monster now and more like a force that had been hurt too many times. Between them, the crown of first lightning floated in the air, turning slowly as if it could not decide which hand should claim it. The central conflict was clear to everyone on Olympus now. If Zeus took the crown too soon, the storm would tear wider and crush the weak balance between realms. If Varkin took it by force, he could break the sky open and send the heavens into collapse. Neither side could afford to lose, and both sides had reasons that made their fury feel real. Zeus lifted his hand first, but not in anger. He knew the shape of war too well, and he had ruled long enough to understand that force could only hold a broken thing for a little while. The lightning spear hovered near his other hand, silver and bright, crackling with white fire, ready to strike if he chose the easy path. Yet his eyes stayed on Varkin, not on the spear. Varkin lowered his head a little, not in surrender, but in warning. His voice rolled out like thunder through a canyon. He said that the heavens had chained him, named him dangerous, and locked him inside the storm vault so they could use his power without hearing his pain. The moving cage of living blue lightning still shimmered behind him in broken pieces, flickering between realms like a scar that had never healed. Varkin did not want Olympus for greed. He wanted the right to exist without a leash. That truth hit the watching gods harder than any lightning blast. Hera, with her black hair and stern silver gown, stood straight at the edge of the terrace and watched everything with cold concern. She had always known Zeus carried burdens that made him hard, but she also saw the cost of his silence now. Athena, with her brown hair, calm eyes, and silver armor, stepped forward a little and studied Varkin as if she were reading a battle map. She understood that a foe with a reason was more dangerous than a simple beast. Hermes, blond and restless in his white traveler tunic, paced once and then froze because he knew the storm would not wait for anyone to be clever. Apollo, with long blonde hair and a worried face, held his harp close and looked at the cracking sky as if even music could not mend it. Demeter, her wheat gold hair tied back and her green robes dusted by wind, looked down toward the mortal world below and feared what would happen if the heavens failed. Iris, with rainbow hair and clear urgent eyes, hovered near Hera and waited for orders, ready to carry messages faster than any storm could move. Ares, red-haired and broad in dark iron armor, wanted to charge in and end the argument by force, but even he could feel that this fight was bigger than pride. Then the breach above Olympus widened again, and the sound was like a giant door being torn from its frame. A ring of dark light opened in the clouds, and through it came fragments of the storm vault, shifting blue bars of lightning that folded and unfolded like a cage trying to remember its shape. The vault had been made to hold dangerous power and move between realms, but now it was failing, dragged open by the same storm that fed it. That was the hidden truth behind the disaster. Long ago, the storm vault had not only held Varkin. It had also been used to pull storm power from him whenever Olympus needed strength for its own wars. That abuse had fed his fury for years, and Zeus had allowed it because he believed the safety of the heavens mattered more than one prisoner's suffering. Now that lie had come home. Varkin looked up at the fracture in the sky, and for the first time his anger changed shape. He was not only fighting Zeus. He was fighting the memory of every chain, every order, and every time the gods had called cruelty duty. Zeus saw that truth in an instant, and it struck him harder than any blow. He remembered the day the storm vault was built. He remembered saying it was necessary. He remembered looking away when the cage lights closed around Varkin. In that moment, the story twisted in a way that no one on Olympus had expected. Varkin was not born a rebel. He had become one because Olympus had made rebellion the only language left to him. That revelation changed the battle at its core, because now the enemy was not a mindless destroyer, but an injured soul demanding justice from the ruler who had ignored him. Zeus closed his hand and did not seize the crown. Instead, he lowered the lightning spear and spoke in a voice deep enough to cut through the storm. He admitted that he had ruled through fear too often and that he had mistaken control for wisdom. Hera stared at him with surprise because she had waited many ages to hear such honesty from him. Athena did not move, but her eyes sharpened with approval. Ares scowled because he still wanted action, not confession, yet even he could not deny that Zeus had finally stepped into the truth. Zeus then ordered the other gods to hold their positions and not attack. Hermes blinked in shock, then obeyed. Iris shot upward to guide the mortal winds away from the crack in the sky. Demeter sent steady life force toward the fields below so the world would not wither if the storm burst. Apollo raised his harp and played a calm, shining note that steadied the cloud edge for a moment. But Varkin did not trust the sudden change. He spread his wings wide, blue fire burning in his eyes, and demanded to know why he should listen now when Olympus had never listened before. Zeus answered with no lies this time. He said the crown of first lightning had been made to protect the heavens, but its power had always needed balance, not domination. He said the storm vault had fed the breach by taking too much from Varkin and the storm. He said he had feared that if he gave up control, everything would fall apart, so he had chosen harsh order over mercy. That confession made the sky quieter for one breath, and then the crown flashed with a new and unstable pulse. The core inside it was cracking faster now, and the crown began to fall toward the open storm like a star losing its path. Varkin lunged at once, not to claim it, but to keep it from shattering the whole sky. Zeus moved at the same time, and for one terrible second the old battle returned. Lightning and dragon wing collided in a burst of white-blue fire, and both were driven back across the bridge. The force sent cracks racing through the marble below them. The gods gasped. Even Ares took a step back. It looked as if everything would break in the next heartbeat. But then Varkin did something no one expected. Instead of pushing Zeus away, he turned his body and shielded the falling crown from the worst of the storm. His wings took the blast, his claws dug into the shattered bridge, and his furious face tightened with strain. Zeus saw that act and understood that Varkin was not trying to destroy Olympus anymore. He was trying to force it to finally face the truth. Zeus reached out again, slower this time, and this time he did not reach for control. He reached for trust. The lightning scar on his brow flared, and the crown of first lightning responded to both of them at once. Its shards of power began to circle, not as a weapon, but as a seal. Athena shouted that the crown was searching for balance, not ownership. Hera understood it first and called for the gods to join the effort. Hermes raced to the broken edge and guided the storm currents. Iris carried Hera and Athena words in quick flashes to every terrace. Demeter grounded the lower winds. Apollo kept his steady note alive. Ares, though still fierce, planted himself beside Zeus and held the line with brute strength when the platform shook. Together they formed a ring around the crown and the tier above. Zeus spoke one final command, but this time it was a command of release. He ordered the storm vault to open and empty what it had stolen. The blue lightning cage shattered into streams of light, and the stolen power rose into the sky instead of being forced back into chains. Varkin roared, not in pain, but in release, and his body lifted as the old burden left him. The breach did not close yet, but it stopped widening. The storm slowed. The crown steadied. The heavens did not collapse. Still, the danger was not gone, because the seal was only temporary, and something even older than the storm had started to wake beyond the breach. Zeus looked into that dark opening and knew this was only the first true answer, not the final one. Varkin stood beside him, breathing hard, no longer an enemy in that instant, but not yet an ally either. Both of them had changed, and Olympus had changed with them. The gods watched in stunned silence as the storm settled into a tense and uneasy calm, and the next shadow waiting above the breach promised that the hardest trial was still coming. Olympus hung under a black and silver sky, and the air still shook with old thunder. The shattered storm bridge floated above the deep clouds, broken into wide white slabs and dark stone ribs. Below it, the storm fracture glowed like a wound in the sky, and every pulse from it sent a cold wave across the mountain of the gods. Zeus stood near the edge of the breach, tall and worn, his white hair wild in the wind, his thick golden beard lifted by the storm, and his lightning-crowned scar faintly glowing on his brow. His bright white robe and dark blue storm cloak whipped around his strong frame, while the gold armor on one shoulder flashed in the lightning. Beside him, Varkin crouched low on the stone, a huge black dragon with glowing blue eyes, star-cracked wings, and storm marks across his chest. He had the look of a beast ready to strike, but also the look of one who had just seen something he never expected. Behind them, Hera watched with a stern face, her black hair falling straight over her silver and white gown. Athena stood with calm eyes and brown hair, her silver armor shining under a white battle cloak. Ares, with his red hair and iron armor, looked eager for another clash. Hermes paced on the broken marble, blonde hair flashing as he moved. Apollo held his harp close, his long blonde hair shining softly. Demeter, with wheat gold hair and green robes, looked toward the mortal world far below. Iris, with rainbow hair and a pale blue dress, hovered near the back, ready to carry warnings anywhere they were needed. The central danger was clear now. The storm in the fracture was waking, and if it broke open fully, it could spill into Olympus, then through Olympus, and then into every realm below. Zeus knew that if they failed here, no wall, no prayer, and no godly strength would stop the damage. Varkin had helped hold the first wave back, but nobody knew why he had changed his mind, and nobody trusted that change yet. Zeus broke the silence first, because the silence itself was becoming dangerous. He lowered the lightning spear, which still crackled with restless white fire, and he looked at Varkin with narrowed eyes. He asked one simple question with a voice that carried over the storm. "Why did you come here instead of fleeing?" Varkin lifted his head slowly, and his blue eyes burned with a hard, old anger that seemed mixed with shame. He said that he had followed the pull of the fracture for a long time, not because he wanted Olympus to fall, but because the storm had been calling him since before the others had noticed it. The dragon explained in rough and careful words that the crown of first lightning was not only a symbol of rule, it was a lock. It had once sealed the storm vault, a moving cage of living lightning hidden between realms, and that vault held a force too wild for any single ruler to command. Long ago, Varkin had been made to guard the outer paths around that prison because he could sense storm shifts before they broke. But the vault had started to weaken when someone on Olympus began drawing too much power from the crown. That pull had reopened the fracture little by little until the crack in the sky had become large enough for the storm inside to wake. Zeus listened without interrupting, and the truth landed on him with the weight of iron. The crown he had worn as a sign of rule was also part of the seal that kept a far worse force from spilling out. That was why the storm had reacted to his bloodline, his power, and his anger. That was why the breach had answered him as if it knew his name. Athena stepped forward next, her calm face tightening as the pieces fit together. She said that the hidden enemy did not want chaos for its own sake. It wanted the crown of first lightning because the crown could open the storm vault fully and turn its shifting power into a weapon. The enemy had likely studied the old divine laws for years, waiting for the right moment when Zeus would be distracted, weakened, or divided from the other gods. Hera's stern eyes sharpened at that, and she asked who would dare to move against Olympus from within. Athena did not answer with a name yet because she did not have proof, but she did say the pattern was clear. Someone had been feeding energy into the fracture through secret rites, making the storm think it was being fed and protected while actually teaching it to widen. Apollo looked stricken, and his gentle face grew pale as he said that he had heard a low cry inside the weather for days, a sound almost like a trapped voice singing in pain. Demeter pressed her hands together, worried for the mortal world, and said that if the fracture grew larger, the storms could smash the crops, break the seas, and bring fear into every home below. Hermes finally stopped pacing because even he could see the scale of what was at stake. This was no longer a palace problem or a family fight. This was a realm-wide wound that could spread if it was not sealed soon. Zeus felt the eyes of all the gods on him, and he also felt the harder truth beneath them. If he had failed to watch his own throne carefully, then his pride had helped create this danger. Then the storm shifted, and the next shadow above the breach finally showed itself. It did not arrive with a shout. It arrived with a heavy pull in the air, like a giant hand closing around the sky. The clouds split in a slow spiral, and a huge shape began to circle inside the fracture. At first it looked like another storm beast, but then the lightning flashed across its frame and revealed something colder and more made of purpose. It was a guardian construct built from blue storm fire, broken metal, and ancient divine seal marks. Its body was shaped like a giant armored bird, yet its face held no life at all. Instead, it wore a smooth mask of black stone, and a bright symbol burned at its center, the same mark that appeared on sealed doors in the oldest parts of Olympus. Athena recognized it at once and said the simple truth. This thing was a watcher from the storm vault, and it had awakened because the vault had sensed a breach in the lock. That meant someone had not only disturbed the seal, but had also activated an old defense meant to keep intruders away from the true heart of the prison. Hera stepped back because even her iron calm could feel the danger. Ares planted his boots and grinned in the face of fear, but his grip tightened on his weapon. Iris faded upward, ready to carry warnings to every hall. The Guardian swept past the edge of the fracture, and with one strike of its wing, it hurled a wave of storm shards across the bridge. Stone cracked, marble slid. A flash of blue force drove Hermes backward, and Apollo raised a hand just in time to shield his harp. Zeus slammed the lightning spear into the ground, and a bright ring of lightning pushed the first wave away. Varkin lunged beside him, spreading his star-cracked wings to block the flying storm glass. For one brief moment, the dragon and the king moved as if they had trained together for years. That moment mattered because the others saw it and Zeus saw it too. Varkin was not here to destroy Olympus tonight. He was here because he knew the storm better than any of them did. The clash did not become a full battle yet, but it deepened into something more dangerous because now the gods understood that the Watcher was only a warning. Zeus ordered everyone into motion. Athena took the left side of the bridge and began studying the seals carved into the stone, looking for the pattern that controlled the Guardian. Hermes raced along the broken path to check whether any other storm shapes were moving below the clouds. Ares guarded the center, ready to drive anything back that came near the fracture. Apollo used soft light from his harp to steady the wounded air, trying to calm the storm enough for thought to return. Demeter called up threads of earth and grain power from the mountain below, weaving them into the broken stone so the bridge would not fall apart under their feet. Iris moved like a flash between them, carrying quick warnings and messages before panic could spread. Hera stood near Zeus, not softening her stern face, but giving him the kind of quiet support that only a queen could offer. Then Zeus faced Vulcan again and made a hard choice. He told the dragon that if he wanted trust, he would have to earn it now in the open, before all of Olympus. He also said that if Vulcan was hiding anything, the storm would expose it. Vulcan answered with a low rumble and said that he accepted that risk because the storm had already chosen sides. His words were simple, but they carried weight. He admitted that long ago he had once tried to tear open the storm vault out of rage after he was used as a guard and treated like a monster. He had failed, and the failure had marked him with the storm signs across his chest. Since then, he had hated Olympus for its pride, but he had never wanted the vault to fully open. He feared what lived behind it because he had heard it whisper his own name through the cracks. That was the twist that changed the air around them. Vulcan had not been only a rebel. He had been a failed guardian who knew the prison from the inside, and the hidden enemy had likely been using that old wound to drag him back toward the breach. Before Zeus could answer, the guardian construct dropped from the sky and struck the bridge in a burst of blue force. The impact shook the entire span, and the storm fracture widened by a thin but visible line. Everyone braced, and for a heartbeat it seemed the bridge might break completely. Zeus did not hesitate. He drove the lightning spear upward, and a column of storm light met the guardian head-on. Vulcan struck from the side, claws and wings cutting through the storm wind, forcing the construct to turn. Athena shouted directions as she saw one of the seal marks glowing brighter than the others. She said the guardian was not attacking randomly. It was trying to protect the weakest point in the fracture, where the hidden hand had already started opening the vault path. That meant the real enemy was still not in front of them. The real enemy was somewhere beyond the visible storm, using the breach as a door. Zeus understood the danger at once. If they destroyed the guardian blindly, they might weaken the seal even more. If they left it alone, it would keep driving them back until the fracture fully opened. So he did the one thing that no one expected. He told Vulcan to trust him for one strike. Vulcan stared at him, then snapped his wings open and nodded once. Together, God and dragon rushed the guardian from opposite sides. Zeus aimed the spear at the bright center mark, while Vulcan slammed his storm-marked chest against the construct, forcing its frame to tilt. The crackling spear struck true, and the construct froze in a burst of light. The guardian did not explode or collapse in a blaze. Instead, it split open like a locked gate, revealing a narrow vision inside the storm. For one clear second, the others saw a dark throne chamber, a hidden figure standing behind glassy lightning, and the crown of first lightning resting on a pedestal of black stone. The figure turned, as if it had felt their gaze. Then the vision snapped shut. Zeus stood still, breathing hard, and the truth was now impossible to ignore. Someone was already inside the deeper storm, waiting with knowledge of the crown and the vault. The battle was no longer just at the fracture. It had become a race to reach the heart of the storm before the hidden enemy claimed the crown first. Zeus looked toward the opening and felt both dread and resolve. This was only the first real answer, not the final one, and the next part of the war had already begun. The broken sky above Olympus had grown darker by the minute, and the air inside the storm felt cold, heavy, and sharp enough to sting the skin. White lightning flashed through tall blue clouds, and the shattered storm bridge hung in pieces over the deep crack in the sky. Zeus stood at the opening of the deeper storm, still breathing hard, with his white robe torn by wind and his storm cloak snapping behind him. He was the ruler of Olympus, a man with white hair, a thick golden beard, and a tired face that had carried too much power for too long. The glowing scar of the lightning crown burned faintly on his brow, and that scar reminded him of the crown of first lightning, the sacred item that once helped him keep the balance of the storms. Now the crown was missing, the storm vault had moved deeper into the fracture, and a hidden enemy was already waiting inside with knowledge that should not exist. That truth changed everything. This was no longer only a rescue. It was a race, and if the wrong hand reached the crown first, Olympus could lose its sky forever. Zeus looked ahead and felt dread, but he also felt the old weight of duty return. He had to move, and he had to move now. Hera arrived beside him first, walking with calm steps even while the wind fought her silver and white goddess gown. She was a woman with black hair, a straight back, and a stern face that could silence a room without raising her voice. She cared for order, for wisdom, and for the safety of Olympus, and she had little patience for secrets that endangered everyone. Behind her came Athena, a woman with brown hair, clear eyes, and a battle cloak that moved like a blade in the air. Athena was the thinker of the group, the one who wanted the truth before the next strike, and she knew that the hidden enemy could not have reached the deeper storm by chance. Ares came next, a man with red hair, heavy iron armor, and a scar across one cheek. He wanted a fight, and he wanted it now because he believed the quickest answer was always force. Hermes landed lightly on the cracked stone, a blond man with quick eyes, winged sandals, and a restless body that never stayed still. He wanted speed, movement, and a path through danger before the storm could close around them. Apollo followed, a young-looking man with long blonde hair, a gold robe, and a harp held close to his side. He looked worried, but his kindness made him listen closely to every voice. Demeter arrived with earth-bound care, a woman with wheat gold hair and green robes, and she looked toward the mortal world far below as if she could already feel its fear. Iris came last in a flash of pale blue and rainbow hair, her face serious and urgent because she had already carried messages through the storm and seen signs no one else had yet understood. They all knew the stakes now. If the crown of first lightning was taken, the storm vault could be turned, the fracture could widen, and the divine order of Olympus could be broken open like weak glass. Zeus raised his lightning spear, and the silver shaft crackled with white storm fire as if it remembered old wars. He did not swing it yet. Instead, he stared into the deeper storm and listened. That was when Athena pointed to the moving walls of lightning around the vault path. The storm vault was not a fixed place. It was a living cage made of blue lightning, and it shifted between realms whenever it sensed danger. Only someone who understood its old rhythm could enter it without getting thrown back. That explained the hidden enemy, and it also made the danger worse. The enemy was not guessing. The enemy had studied the vault, learned its movement, and opened a way inside before anyone else had reached the fracture. Hermes darted to the edge of the broken bridge and returned with a grim look. He had found fresh marks in the storm stones, thin lines cut by force and guided by purpose, not random damage. Ares wanted to charge ahead at once, but Athena stopped him with one hand. She said the enemy wanted exactly that, because a wild rush would split the team and let the vault choose the wrong path. Zeus agreed, though it cost him pride to say it. He told them they would move together and they would listen to the storm before striking it. Then the storm answered them. Deep below, a great shape moved inside the blue haze, and the guardian construct rose from the living lightning like a silent gatekeeper. It had no hair, no face with human warmth, only a smooth black stone mask, glowing seal marks at its chest, and wings made from broken metal and storm fire. It was not evil, but it was absolute. Its duty was to protect the storm vault, and now it treated every god before it as a threat. The guardian construct hit the bridge first, and the impact shook the broken marble under everyone. Blue fire flared across its body, and its wings spread wide, blocking the path into the deeper storm. Ares charged with a roar, iron armor ringing, but the construct turned with precise speed and drove him back with a single heavy strike of storm force. Hermes slipped left and tried to circle behind it, but a burst of lightning cut off the path and forced him to retreat. Apollo raised his harp, and a low, steady sound spread across the air, calming the storm for a moment and giving the others a small opening. Demeter pressed her hands to the cracked stone, and vines of green earth energy rose through the bridge, slowing the collapse and keeping the platform from falling apart under the pressure. Iris moved like a flash between them, carrying warning after warning, because every second the bridge shifted closer to the storm below. Zeus understood then that the construct was not just guarding the vault. It was also buying time for someone deeper inside. That meant the hidden enemy was not outside the door anymore. The enemy was already past the first lock. Hera saw the same thing, and her expression hardened. She told Zeus that the real question was no longer who had entered. The real question was who had taught them how. That was when the twist sharpened in Zeus' mind. The knowledge of the crown and the vault had not been stolen from random records. It had come from someone close, someone who knew the old path of the storm and the hidden seal names. The enemy had a guide. Zeus felt the weight of betrayal move through the group like a cold wind. At that moment, a deep rumble rolled through the fracture, and the storm light changed from blue to a darker shade of violet. The guardian construct turned its masked face toward the deeper void, and for one brief instant it stopped attacking. Athena noticed that pause and understood the pattern. The construct was reacting to a command from inside the vault, not from outside it. Someone within the storm was steering the path in real time. That meant the hidden enemy had not just entered the storm vault. They were trying to take control of it from the inside while the gods were still standing on the bridge. Zeus tightened his grip on the lightning spear and made his choice. He would not waste another second trying to force the construct down. He would break through its rhythm, reach the inner path, and find the one who was guiding it. Hera stepped close to him and said that if he went alone, he would be trapped by the storm. Zeus answered that if he waited too long, the crown would be gone. Ares wanted to follow by pure force, Athena wanted a clean plan, Hermes wanted a faster route, and Apollo wanted to keep everyone steady. Demeter and Iris stood between fear and duty, each knowing that the mortal world and the heavens were tied together by what happened next. Then a new shock hit them all. From deep inside the lightning cage, a voice echoed through the storm, calm and sharp, and it called Zeus by name as if it had been waiting for him all along. The voice said that the crown was never meant to stay hidden, and that Zeus had finally arrived too late to stop the truth from opening. Zeus froze because he knew that voice, or at least he knew that he should have known it. The hidden enemy was no stranger. The storm was already speaking with a familiar mouth, and the next step forward would take them straight into the heart of that terrible secret. Zeus lowered his spear just enough to look into the shifting light, and for the first time since the fracture opened, he did not only feel anger. He felt doubt. That doubt was dangerous, but it was also honest, and honesty was what the storm had been trying to strip away from him. Athena moved beside him and spoke in a low voice, telling him that the enemy inside the vault was using an old bond, an old promise, or an old lie. She could not yet tell which one, but she knew it had changed the path of the war. Hera watched Zeus with controlled concern because she saw his burden growing heavier, and she knew he had carried it alone for too long. Ares gritted his teeth and finally held back because even he could see that this fight would not be won by rage alone. Hermes checked the broken bridge behind them and said the storm was shifting faster now, which meant they had only a short window before the path closed. Apollo steadied his harp, ready to calm the next wave. Demeter looked down toward the world and whispered that the mortal fields would suffer if the sky broke open anymore. Iris turned toward the deeper storm and confirmed what Athena feared. There was a second signal now hidden inside the first, and it was guiding the vault toward a final chamber. Zeus listened, and the tired ruler in him began to change. He was still powerful, still stern, and still burdened, but now he was also willing to trust his team instead of carrying every fear alone. He lifted his head, met their eyes one by one, and gave the order to move. The storm no longer felt like a wall. It felt like a path with traps, secrets, and a waiting enemy. Together, they stepped toward the deeper lightning, and the guardian shifted aside just enough to let them enter, while the voice from within the vault kept speaking in the dark, promising that the crown would soon reveal what Zeus had hidden from everyone, even from himself. The race had truly begun now, and the next part of the storm waited just beyond the light. The storm vault opened into a long chamber where lightning moved like breathing veins under the floor, and every wall flashed with cold blue light that made the shadows jump and twist. Zeus walked first, tall and heavy with old power, his white hair bright against the dark, his golden beard sharp in the storm glow, and the scar of lightning on his brow pulsing as if it remembered pain. Beside him came Hera, straight and calm, her black hair neat against her silver and white gown, her eyes fixed on every corner as if she expected the truth to jump out and strike. Athena followed with her brown hair tied back, her silver armor quiet under her white battle cloak, and her mind already counting every step and every sound. Hermes moved like a restless spark, his blonde hair shining under the storm, while Apollo kept his long blonde hair behind his shoulders and held his harp close like it could steady his shaking hands. Demeter came with her wheat gold hair and green robes, looking more tired than the others because she was thinking of the mortal world that might suffer if they failed. Iris, with her rainbow hair and pale blue dress, stayed near the rear, ready to run messages through any crack in the storm. Ares, with his red hair and iron armor, looked eager for a fight, while Vulcan the black dragon waited with glowing blue eyes and storm marks across his chest, his great wings folded tight so they could all fit within the vault. They had entered because the crown of first lightning was still missing, and if the voice inside the vault spoke truth, then the crown held the answer to what Zeus had hidden, what the storm had buried, and what might tear Olympus apart if no one found it first. The voice drifted ahead of them again, calm and cold, saying that the path would narrow, that the honest would be tested, and that Zeus would soon face the memory he had chained away from himself. No one liked that answer, but none of them turned back because the storm outside was already changing, and the storm inside was now the only road forward. They advanced with careful steps, and the floor began to split into moving plates that slid away when touched, then locked again with sharp bursts of light. Athena raised a hand and stopped the group before Ares could charge ahead, because she saw the pattern before anyone else did. The vault was not random. It was a test built from old divine logic, meant to punish fear, pride, and hurry. Hermes crouched near the first crack and touched the edge, then pulled back fast when a thin lash of lightning snapped up like a warning. He grinned with nervous energy, but his eyes stayed sharp. "It reacts to weight and timing," he said, while Athena nodded and looked across the chamber. She found narrow safe marks hidden in the floor, small bright seals that appeared only when the lightning dimmed between pulses. "We move only when the room exhales," she said, and Zeus listened, which was rare enough to matter. Hera watched him closely, because she could see the strain in his face and the way his hand brushed the lightning-shaped crown scar on his brow, as if he was trying to wake some lost part of himself. Then the voice returned from ahead, low and smooth. It said the king of storms had sealed the truth in shame, not wisdom. It said the truth had not been taken from him. It had been hidden by him. Zeus stopped at that, and for one clear moment, the weight of the entire sky seemed to rest on his shoulders. He did not deny it. That silence scared the others more than any shout could have done, because it meant the voice knew a piece of the story no one else did. Before anyone could ask, the floor ahead shifted again, and a line of blue fire rose between them and the next passage, forcing the group to split into pairs and choose their path. Ares took the front with Apollo, while Hera stayed with Zeus, and Athena led Hermes, Demeter, Iris, and Vulcan through the safer side route that curved along the broken wall. The split was not random either. It was a clever trap meant to pull apart trust. Ares wanted to force through the fire line, but Apollo caught his arm and shook his head. "The storm wants anger," he said, his voice quiet but firm. "Do not feed it." That surprised Ares enough to make him hesitate, and the battle scar across his cheek tightened as he lowered his shoulders. Hera used that moment to speak to Zeus in a voice only he could hear. She asked what he had hidden and why the vault would know it. Zeus looked forward, then down, then away. He said he did not remember everything, only that there had been a storm older than his crown and a choice that had broken something important. He had locked the memory away because it was tied to shame, and because if others knew the full truth, they might have turned on Olympus in fear. That answer did not satisfy Hera, but it made sense, and that made it worse. Athena, on the other side, found rune marks cut into the wall, and she read them as she moved. They told of a first covenant, one made before the current age of gods, when the crown of first lightning was not a symbol of rule, but a key. Vulcan heard that and lifted his head, his blue eyes narrowing. He had been silent too long, and now the others realized that he was not simply guarding them, he was remembering. When Iris noticed that, she asked him a direct question, and Vulcan answered in a low, rough voice that the crown was meant to keep something asleep beneath Olympus, not to give power to whoever wore it. That revelation changed the air at once. The crown was not just missing, it was part of a lock, and if the lock broke, the world would not merely suffer chaos. Something sealed beneath the sky could wake up and bring far greater danger than any storm. The voice in the vault seemed to enjoy the fear it caused, and it guided them toward a wide chamber where the ceiling had broken open to a view of the storm fracture above Olympus. Dark light poured through the crack in the sky, and the broken storm bridge floated beyond it like a path that had been cut by a giant hand. At the center of the chamber stood a pedestal of cracked stone, and on it rested the crown of first lightning, bright and terrible, with jagged points and blue veins of power racing through its gold. For one breath, all of them stared, because the crown looked both beautiful and wrong, like something sacred that had been forced to hold too much force. Zeus stepped forward first, but the vault answered with a deep tremor, and the guardian construct dropped from the ceiling in a burst of storm, fire, and broken metal. Its bird-shaped body spread wide, its black stone mask facing them with empty patience, and the glowing symbol at its chest flared like an eye. It did not attack with rage. It attacked with purpose, driving them back from the crown as if the act of touching it would break a rule too old to bend. Ares threw himself in front, his iron armor ringing as he blocked the first impact. Hermes darted to the side, trying to draw the guardian away. Athena called out the pattern of its movement, seeing that its wings, claws, and chest symbol worked together like a lock and key. Demeter raised her hands and called the storm vines of earth and grain from a crack in the stone floor, not to harm the guardian but to slow it. Apollo struck a bright chord on his harp, sending a wave of steady light through the room, while Iris flashed across the chamber with a message to Zeus that said the pedestal was holding the crown in place through the same seal that had trapped the memory. That was when Zeus understood the worst part. The crown was not only a prize or a weapon. It was the seal that he himself had made long ago, and the hidden memory was the reason he had dared not face it. Zeus took one slow breath, and the tired anger in his face gave way to something deeper, something older and sadder. He had been carrying the burden alone because he had thought a king must always stand above fear, above doubt, and above the pain of past choices. But the vault had forced him to see the cost of that pride. He turned to the others, and for the first time in this storm, he did not sound like a ruler. He sounded like a man who had finally chosen truth over shame. He told them that long ago, when the first lightning fell, he had used the crown of first lightning to seal away a storm-born force that could twist the sky and pull the realms apart. The force had not been evil in the simple way a monster is evil. It had been wild, ancient, and impossible to control, and Zeus had feared that if he spoke of it, the gods would fight each other over it and make the disaster worse. So he had hidden the truth, then hidden the memory, then hidden the crown itself, believing he was protecting everyone. The vault answered with another shaking pulse, as if agreeing and condemning him at the same time. Hera closed her eyes for one brief moment, not from surprise, but from the pain of understanding how much loneliness had shaped his choice. Then Athena stepped beside Zeus and said that a secret made in fear can still become a trap, even when it begins as protection. Zeus nodded because he knew she was right. Together, they moved. Ares pinned the guardian long enough for Hermes to slip behind its wing and cut the storm chain feeding its core. Apollo played a steadying note that kept the chamber from collapsing. Demeter and Iris held the broken bridge route open with light and wind. Athena guided Zeus to the pedestal, where the crown pulsed harder the closer he came. The vault roared around them, the voice rising at last in clear anger, and then the storm fracture above the chamber flashed bright enough to blind them all for a second. When the light faded, Zeus had one hand on the pedestal and one hand reaching toward the crown of first lightning, but the final seal had not broken yet. The guardian was falling back, the path behind them was shifting, and the voice from the dark was still speaking, now whispering that the true prison was about to open. Zeus looked at the crown, then at his allies, and the old man of thunder finally understood that the next choice would decide not only whether he reclaimed his memory, but whether he could trust the others with the truth before the sky itself came apart. The storm vault shook like a living thing, and blue lightning ran through its walls in fast, angry veins. Broken stone plates drifted in the air, turning slowly above a deep floor of dark metal and old seal marks. Zeus stood near the front with his lightning spear in hand, his white robe flashing with storm light, while Hera, Athena, Ares, Hermes, Apollo, Demeter, and Iris held their places behind him. Vulcan crouched near the edge of the chamber, his black scales shining under the blue glow, his great wings spread wide as if he wanted to block the whole room with his body. The guardian construct had fallen back to the far side, but it did not retreat like a living beast. It moved with cold purpose, one heavy step at a time, its black stone mask facing the crown with perfect focus. Above them, the storm fracture pulsed in the ceiling like a wide wound in the sky, and from somewhere beyond the broken walls, the same dark voice kept whispering that the true prison was about to open. Zeus knew the danger now, and that made the silence around him feel heavier than thunder. The crown of first lightning floated near a ring of glowing runes, its jagged points shaking, its blue cracks bright enough to hurt the eyes. He had been told it was a relic of power, but the first covenant markings carved into the walls told a different story. The crown had not been made only to rule storms. It had once served as a lock. Something ancient and buried had been sealed below Olympus long before any of them had lived, and the crown was part of that prison. Zeus felt that truth strike him harder than any enemy blow, because the same missing years in his mind now felt tied to the same hidden fear. If he pulled the crown free too early, he might open the prison instead of reclaiming his memory. If he waited too long, the voice in the dark might open it first. He looked back at his allies, and for a moment he saw the cost in every face. Hera stood straight, black hair falling over her silver gown, her stern eyes full of calm concern. Athena watched every rune, her brown hair tied back, her mind moving faster than the storm. Ares stood like a wall of iron and scarlet, red hair bristling, eager for a fight but ready to listen. Hermes kept shifting his weight, blonde hair bright even in the gloom, his restless hands already thinking about movement. Apollo held his harp close, long blonde hair glowing gold, his worry easy to see. Demeter, with her weak gold hair and tired face, looked toward the shifting floor as if she could already feel the pain of the mortal world if the seal failed. Iris, with her rainbow hair and urgent eyes, stayed closest to the broken path behind them, ready to run if the chamber collapsed again. Zeus realized that this was the moment he had feared, because truth could either save them or break the last bond between them. Hera was the first to speak, and her voice was steady but not cold. She told Zeus that he had carried fear alone for too long, and that a ruler who hid the truth could become a danger to everyone. Athena added that the runes around the crown were not random decoration. They were warning marks placed there by the first covenant to limit a force that could not be fully destroyed. Ares let out a rough breath and said that warnings were fine, but they were trapped in a storm prison, and hesitation could get them trapped forever. Hermes pointed toward the shifting floor behind them, where the stone path was already moving apart into narrow ledges. He said that the chamber was changing shape every few moments, and if they stayed still, they would be cornered. Apollo listened to the dark whisper echo through the walls, then said softly that the voice sounded patient, not afraid. That made Demeter tense because patient enemies were the worst kind. Iris then brought everyone a sharper truth. She had seen a faint trail in the storm light, a thin line of black energy moving under the floor, and it was heading toward the crown from below. That meant the voice was not only speaking, it was climbing closer. Zeus felt the old pressure in his brow where the lightning-shaped scar burned with memory and pain, and he knew he could not delay any longer. So he told them what little he had recovered. He said the crown had once sat on his head, not as a gift, but as part of an oath. He said he had a role in sealing something away, and that his missing memory was not only loss. It was protection he had forgotten on purpose, or someone had made him forget because the truth was too dangerous to keep in full view. No one moved for a long breath, and in that breath the storm grew louder. Before anyone could answer, the guardian construct struck the floor with one heavy landing, and the chamber jolted hard. Blue storm fire burst from its chest symbol, and the first wave of force slammed across the room. Ares rushed forward with a shout, iron boots grinding on stone, and he took the hit with his armor raised, forcing the beast to turn. Athena moved at once beside him, spear ready, reading the Guardian-esque pattern before it could strike again. She saw that it did not attack with rage. It attacked like a machine following an old order, always aiming to keep the crown untouched. Hermes darted through the broken stones, slipping past a falling plate and grabbing Apollo before a second shock wave tossed him back. Apollo struck one clear note on his harp, and the sound glowed gold in the storm, giving everyone a brief path through the shaking light. Demeter reached out with both hands, and green energy rose from her sleeves to steady the cracked floor long enough for Iris to move. Iris then raced ahead and touched the wall runes, making them flare brighter, and the markings answered her touch by revealing a hidden line under the chamber floor. Varkin let out a deep roar and flung his wings wide, driving a blast of storm wind at the Guardian and forcing it away from the crown for a moment. But the beast did not fall, it only turned its masked face toward Zeus as if it had finally decided who the true threat was. The dark voice then returned, no longer distant, but near enough to cut through the noise. It said that Zeus had remembered just enough to become dangerous, and that if he would not open the prison, then the prison would open through him. That threat made the chamber react. The crown began to rise higher, pulled by unseen force, and the blue cracks in its gold frame widened with a sharp pulse. Athena shouted that the hidden line under the floor was a seal channel, a path that linked the crown to the buried lock below Olympus. She said the Guardian was not defending the crown from them, it was defending the prison from the crown because the crown was both key and chain. Zeus finally understood the cruel twist inside the old system. The seal had been built so that only the King of Thunder could touch it, but that also meant his own power could wake what was buried. The Guardian had been created to stop him if he returned without full memory, because a half-remembered Zeus would be too easy to trick. That was why the creature had attacked with such perfect order. It was following the old law, not hatred. Hera stepped closer to Zeus and told him that the choice now was simple, even if it felt impossible. He could force the crown free and risk opening the true prison, or he could trust them and let the others help him finish remembering the oath that had first bound it shut. Zeus looked at each of them, and in their faces he saw fear, loyalty, and the weight of a world that depended on them. At last he lowered his spear, and that choice itself changed the room. The lightning in the air softened for one small second, as if the storm had listened. Zeus placed his free hand over the glowing scar on his brow, and the old pain split open into a flash of memory. He saw a great hall before the ruin, saw the same crown in his hands, and saw Hera standing beside him with a face full of grief and resolve. He remembered the first covenant not as a promise of rule, but as a pact made to hide a force that fed on storms, fear, and broken trust. He remembered that he had not sealed the prison alone. The others had helped him. Hera had guarded the words, Athena had written the runes, Ares had held back the first surge, Hermes had carried the warning to the edges of Olympus, Apollo had hidden the sound of the lock with sacred song. Demeter had tied the seal to the cycles of the mortal world so the prison would weaken only if the sky and earth both failed. Iris had carried messages through the storm when the first crack appeared. And Vulcan, ancient and proud even then, had agreed to guard the path because he knew the prison could not be held by law alone. Zeus opened his eyes with a hard breath, and the truth hit him fully. The crown had not erased his memory by accident. He had ordered it hidden inside himself because he had feared that if the wrong power learned the whole oath, it could use his mind to unlock the prison from within. That was the real danger. The prison was not waiting for a key in their hands. It was waiting for a weakness in Zeus himself. He spoke the first recovered words of the oath, and the chamber answered with a low, deep rumble. But before the full seal could stabilize, the black voice laughed from the dark below, and a new crack split through the floor between the runes. Something beneath the storm vault had heard him remember. It was waking, and the others could already feel the next shock coming. The chamber under Olympus felt smaller now, even while it kept changing shape, because fear made every wall seem closer and every shadow seem deeper. Blue lightning ran through the storm vault chamber in hard, living lines, and the cracked stone plates floated in slow circles over the floor. Above them, the storm bridge shook with every distant roar, and the wide storm fracture overhead glowed like a wound that would not close. Zeus stood at the center of the runes with his thick golden beard lit by storm light, his white hair sharp against the dark, and the crown scar on his brow pulsing faintly as if it hurt to remember. Hera, the stern woman with black hair and a silver gown, stayed beside him with calm eyes that missed nothing. Athena, the brown-haired woman in silver armor and a white cloak, bent low to study the glowing marks. Ares, the broad man with red hair and iron armor, planted his boots like he wanted to fight the whole vault. Hermes, the blonde man with winged sandals, paced in nervous circles. Apollo, the young man with long blonde hair and a gold robe, held his harp close and watched the floor with worry. Demeter, the woman with wheat gold hair and green robes, kept one hand near the broken stone as if she could still protect the mortal world through sheer will. Iris, the woman with rainbow hair and pale blue dress, hovered near the edge, ready to carry news anywhere it was needed. All of them understood the same hard truth now: if Zeus could not hold his memory steady, the prison below would keep answering his weakness until it broke free. The new crack split wider between the storm seal runes, and a black laugh rose from underneath the floor. It was not loud, but it reached into the chest and made the heart tight. The voice belonged to the force trapped below, and it was patient enough to sound amused. It did not need to rush because it had already found the real door. Zeus tightened his grip on the lightning spear, and the silver shaft flashed in his hand with white storm fire. He had already spoken the first recovered words of the oath, and now he forced himself to say the next line, even though the memory felt like sand slipping through his fingers. The chamber answered with a low tremor, then a stronger rumble, and the crown of first lightning flickered as blue cracks raced across its gold surface. Athena lifted her eyes sharply because she saw the pattern first. The prison was not opening by force alone, it was listening. It was waiting for Zeus to say the full oath, but it was also hunting for the place where his mind still slipped, because that slip would let the seal bend. Hera moved closer to him, her voice low and steady, and she told him to breathe, remember the sky, and speak only what was true. Her concern was not soft, but it was real. She knew that Zeus had ruled too long, carried too much, and hidden too much, and that guilt could become as dangerous as any enemy. She wrapped around the glowing crack and pointed her spear at the first covenant markings carved in the wall. The carvings were old, worn, and partly buried by storm dust, but they showed the shape of a truth that had been hidden for ages. Long before this moment, the crown of first lightning had not only worn power, it had served as a lock. It had sealed something deep under Olympus, something the other gods had agreed never to wake. Athena spoke the discovery clearly so no one could miss the meaning. The prison was built to hold a buried force called the understorm, a source of raw, dark storm power that did not belong to the sky or the earth. It had no body at first, only will, hunger, and a voice that could slip into broken minds. The old gods had locked it away with the crown because it could not be destroyed, only contained. That was why Zeus was the only one who could repair the seal now. His lightning was part of the original covenant and his memory held the final words, but that same truth created the new danger. The understorm had learned that Zeus had forgotten parts of the oath, and it had begun to use his shame and fatigue to widen the crack. It was not trying to break the prison all at once. It was trying to make Zeus finish the lock the wrong way so the seal would turn into a gate. Apollo looked pale as he listened because he understood the cost. If the seal failed, the storm above Olympus could tear open and pour across the worlds. Demeter closed her hands into fists because the mortal lands would suffer first. Hermes stopped pacing for one full second, which showed how serious the situation was, and he asked what they could do right now before the next shock hit. Much time to answer. The floor trembled, the blue veins in the walls flashed white, and the guardian construct woke with a sharp mechanical cry from across the chamber. It had the shape of a giant armored bird built from blue storm fire and broken metal plates with a black stone mask and a glowing mark on its chest. It had only one purpose, and that purpose had now been disturbed. It spread its vast wings and charged the nearest weak point in the seal, not because it was evil, but because it was following its ancient rule. The construct believed the crack itself was an intruder. Ares roared and moved in front of the others, iron armor clashing as he met the guardian head-on. He was angry, reckless, and ready for conflict, but even he knew this was not a battle he could simply win by force. His boots slid across the floating stone when the guardian struck with brutal precision, and the impact threw sparks of blue fire across the chamber. Hermes darted in to pull Ares away before the guardian could overwhelm him, his winged sandals skimming the ground in quick bursts. Hera called for everyone to stay in formation, and her stern voice held them together when panic tried to split them apart. Iris flashed across the room with urgent speed to guide Apollo toward a safer angle, because his calm light would be needed soon. Apollo raised his harp and a warm gold note spread through the storm air, steadying the shaking runes for a heartbeat. Demeter pressed her palm to the floor and sent a low green pulse through the stone, helping the broken plates settle long enough for Zeus to stand firm. Then the black voice laughed again from below, and the chamber answered with another deep rumble that pushed everyone back half a step. The understorm was not just watching anymore, it was testing them. He realized something that hurt more than the crack beneath his feet. He had been trying to remember the oath alone, as if memory were a stone he had to lift by himself. But the covenant had never belonged to him alone. It had been made by all the gods standing together, each one adding a piece so the lock could hold. That was the hidden truth buried in the old markings. The prison had always depended on unity, and the black voice was feeding on division. Zeus turned his face toward Hera, then Athena, then the others, and he spoke the next part of the oath not as a command, but as a request. He asked them to speak the words with him, each one taking the line that matched their strength. Hera gave the first answer, clear and unshaken. Athena followed with exact memory, cutting through confusion. Apollo added the line of light, and his voice made the crown glow brighter. Demeter spoke for the earth below the sky, and the storm light softened for a brief moment. Hermes gave the words of movement and passage, because he understood every path between danger and escape. Iris added the line of messages carried through distance, because truth had to travel without breaking. Even Ares, who hated stillness, gave the line of resistance with a fierce voice that made the chamber ring. As their words joined, the crown of first lightning blazed hard enough to throw sharp shadows across the walls. The crack in the floor stopped growing for one breath, then one more. But the black voice shifted, colder now, and it spoke a new truth that none of them had expected. Zeus had not simply forgotten the oath from age or strain. Part of the oath had been taken from him on purpose. Someone had once cut the memory away to keep the prison hidden, and that meant the real traitor was not below the vault. The traitor had helped build the seal from the inside. The chamber went still after that revelation because every god there understood that the next shock would not only come from the understorm, it could also come from the hand that had erased Zeus himself. And as the floor split a little wider, the storm above Olympus gathered all its weight for the next, while the allies held the seal together and braced for the truth still waiting in the dark below. Broken sky above Olympus, and every blue lightning vein in its walls shivered with pain. Cold wind rushed through the cracks in the floor, while dark storm light flashed across carved stone, broken seal marks, and floating plates that trembled like frightened hands. Zeus stood at the center with his lightning spear in one hand and the crown of first lightning burning faintly on his brow, his white hair blown back, his thick golden beard lit by storm glare, and his tired eyes fixed on the widening fracture below. Hera stood beside him in silver and white, her black hair still and neat even in the chaos, her stern face set in calm control. Athena watched the runes with brown hair tied back, her mind moving faster than the storm. Ares, with red hair and heavy iron armor, kept his stance low and ready. Hermes, blonde and restless, hovered near the edge, ready to move. Apollo, with long blonde hair and a worried face, held his harp close as if sound itself might save them. Demeter, with wheat gold hair and earth-green robes, guarded the mortal world in her thoughts. Iris, with rainbow hair and pale blue cloth, leaned in toward the seal, listening for the next warning. And above them, Varkin the ancient dragon spread his black wings, his blue eyes sharp and fierce, his storm-marked chest rising with slow, angry breaths. All of them now understood the same terrible truth: the understorm was not only waiting below, but someone inside their own history had helped build the prison that held it. Silence mattered more than noise. Then Athena stepped forward and pointed at the first covenant markings carved deep into the wall. She spoke with a clear, steady voice, and every word landed like a stone. The seal was not made to lock the understorm away forever, she explained. It was made to delay it until a proper keeper could renew the covenant. That was why the crown of first lightning was needed, and that was why the storm had reacted so violently when Zeus wore it again. The crown was not only a symbol of rule, it was the key that matched the ancient lock. Hera turned toward the marks, and her sharp eyes narrowed as she noticed a line of carving that had been hidden by cracked thunderstone. It showed a hand reaching from inside the seal, not from outside. That hand had helped shape the inner binding. Ares grunted in anger because that meant the traitor had not sneaked in later. The traitor had been there from the start. Hermes snapped his head around the chamber, looking at every face, every shadow, every broken edge. Apollo felt the air tighten around his chest because if one god had worked from within, then anyone could have been fooled. Demeter asked the question that made the chamber colder. Who had the motive to hide such a secret for so long? Athena answered before the others could speak. The traitor did not want the understorm released. The traitor wanted control over the seal because whoever controlled the lock could control fear, worship, and the balance of Olympus itself. That made the danger clearer, and it also made it worse. A lie built into a prison was harder to break than iron. With a harsh crack, and black lightning hissed upward like a warning tongue. The understorm spoke from the dark below, its voice flat and mocking, as if it had heard every word. It said that the gods were finally learning how little they knew. It said the seal was never pure because it had been made by hands that feared power more than truth. The voice did not roar, it whispered, and that made it worse. Zeus lowered the lightning spear and planted its butt into the stone, using it like an anchor against the tremor. The spear flashed brighter, answering the storm pressure below. Hera ordered everyone to form a ring around the crack because the floor was not just breaking. The seal was being tested from underneath. Varkin slammed one claw down beside the opening and spread his wings wide, forcing the storm wind to bend away from the center. His blue eyes burned as he pushed back the rising pressure with raw will. Ares braced on the opposite side, iron boots grinding against stone, his battle scar tight with strain as he held a floating slab in place with both hands. Hermes darted from rune to rune, pressing his palms against glowing points that kept slipping out of alignment. He was fast, but he was also careful now because one wrong touch could make the whole chamber collapse. Iris moved with him, catching failing light threads and weaving them back into the seal marks. Apollo began to play a low, steady note on his harp, and the sound spread through the chamber like a calm hand across a fevered brow. The music did not stop the storm, but it slowed the panic. Demeter knelt near the edge and touched the stone with both hands, asking the earth power beneath Olympus to hold steady. Her green robes fluttered as the old mountain answered with a deep, tired rumble. Athena then saw something others missed. A hidden pathway of runes opened only when the crown of first lightning pulsed in time with the spear. That meant the crown was not only a key, it was also a guide, and the traitor had hidden this path on purpose. The revelation hit hard because the traitor had expected them to fight the seal from the outside while the true answer was buried inside its own pattern. Zeus felt the old weight of rule settle on him again, heavier than the storm. He had worn the crown once before and lost himself in its power. Now he understood that someone had used that same weakness long ago, and they had built the prison so that his own strength would help keep the secret locked away. Shape of the room. A sharp pulse of black light burst through the fracture, and for one breath the chamber walls showed a memory inside the storm. The allies saw a figure working beside the first covenant markings long ago, shaping the seal with divine skill and calm hands. The figure wore a hood of silver storm cloth, but the posture was familiar, too familiar. Hera stiffened first. Zeus did not move, but his jaw hardened. Athena took one slow breath and her eyes widened with understanding. The traitor had not been some stranger from the lower ranks. The traitor had been a trusted builder from Olympus itself, someone who knew the crown, the vault, and the old laws of the storm. The memory flickered away before a name could be fully seen, but the meaning was clear enough to wound everyone in the chamber. This was not only about betrayal, it was about a hidden choice made long ago, one that had shaped the fate of heaven and earth. The understorm laughed softly from the crack, pleased that the gods were finally close to the truth and still far from safety. Zeus raised his spear and spoke to the group with a voice that cut through the noise. He told them that a seal built on fear could never stay whole. It had to be rebuilt on trust, or it would fail again. Hera looked at him, and for once her stern face softened because she understood exactly what he meant. The gods did not have enough time to solve the full secret of the traitor, but they did have enough time to survive this pressure. So Zeus made a new choice. He ordered the others to trust the living seal they had made together in the moment, not the old one that had been corrupted long ago. Athena shifted the runes. Hermes redirected the lightning paths. Iris called the broken light back into one line. Apollo strengthened the rhythm. Demeter steadied the stone. Ares and Vulcan held the edge as the fracture tried to tear open again. The chamber shook, then shuddered, then slowly stopped widening. The understorm did not escape, but it did not retreat in defeat either. It settled deeper, silent, and patient, like a curse waiting for a better moment. Above them, the storm over Olympus still rolled with heavy force, and somewhere in the dark pattern of the seal, the identity of the inside traitor remained hidden. Zeus felt that truth like a blade he could not see, and yet he did not look away. He had begun this battle as a ruler holding together a failing prison. He now stood as a guardian who understood that truth mattered more than pride. The seal held for the moment, the chamber remained standing, and the allies were not broken. But the path below had opened just enough to promise that the next answer would come from deeper in the dark, where even the oldest gods had reason to fear what waited next. And cold blue lightning moved through its walls like living veins. The chamber around the gods was still standing, but only barely, and every crack in the stone seemed to breathe with hidden danger. Zeus stood near the edge of the open path below, his white hair bright against the dark, his thick golden beard lit by storm flashes, and his tired eyes fixed on the way forward. He no longer looked like a ruler trying to force order on a dying prison. He looked like a guardian who had finally learned that a hard truth could matter more than pride. Hera stood at his side, tall and steady, her black hair falling over her silver and white gown, her stern face watching the chamber and the others without missing a single detail. Ares kept one heavy boot forward, red hair sharp in the lightning glow, his scarred face ready for a clash. Athena held her polished spear close, brown hair neat against her white battle cloak, her calm eyes already reading the runes. Hermes paced in short, quick steps, blonde hair restless, his winged sandals barely touching the floor. Apollo stayed close with his harp in hand, long blonde hair shining softly, his gentle face tight with worry. Demeter, with weak gold hair and green robes, watched the deeper dark with open fear for the mortal world. Iris, with rainbow hair and her pale blue dress, stood near the broken edge of the chamber, ready to carry words faster than danger. And above them all, Varkin the great dragon crouched with black scales, glowing blue eyes, and star-like cracks across his wings, his ancient body tense as if he could feel the storm thinking. The central danger was now clear to all of them. The seal had held for the moment, but the path below had opened, and something buried under the vault was beginning to wake. If that force rose fully, it could break the last lock, smash the storm vault, and throw Olympus into endless chaos.
Sound was not thunder. It was laughter. The understorm spoke from below, its voice cold and smooth, sliding through the stone as if the dark itself had learned how to talk. It said Zeus had come too late, that the gods had built a prison and called it wisdom, and that every lock only proved how afraid they had always been. Zeus tightened his grip on the lightning spear, but he did not answer with anger the way he once would have.
The storm vault hung above the broken clouds like a wound in the sky, and its blue light flashed through the dark in cold pulses. Inside its vast chamber, the air felt tight and sharp, as if every breath had to pass through lightning first. The storm bridge ahead of them was shattered into floating pieces of white marble and dark stone, and the stair below it vanished into a deeper black glow. Zeus stood at the front with his white hair lifted by the wind, his thick golden beard shining against his bright robe, while his lightning-crowned scar gave off a weak and warning glow. He was tired from ruling too long, yet he still held the lightning spear with both hands and kept his eyes fixed on the stair. Behind him stood Hera, tall and steady, with black hair and a stern face that never lost control even when fear touched her heart. Athena watched the runes on the floor with calm brown eyes. Ares gripped his weapon with red hair blazing in the storm light. Hermes bounced on his winged sandals. Apollo held his harp close with worry in his long blonde hair. Demeter guarded the edge with patient care in her weak gold hair, and Iris stood ready to guide them with her rainbow hair bright against the dark. Every one of them understood the same truth now. The understorm was below, the guardian construct was awake, and if the crown of first lightning failed, Olympus would no longer hold its shape. Athena stepped to the broken edge first because she never wasted fear when she could turn it into thought. She knelt beside the glowing storm seal runes and studied the first covenant markings carved into the stone. The old symbols were cracked, but they were not random. They formed a pattern of locks, paths, and warnings, and Athena read them one by one with careful eyes. She said the crown was never only a key, it was also a measure of trust. The old gods had built the prison so that only a ruler who accepted help from others could move deeper inside. Zeus stared at the glowing marks, and the meaning struck him hard. For too long, he had tried to carry every burden alone. That had nearly broken him. Now the prison itself was demanding the opposite. Hera saw the change in him at once, and she gave him the smallest nod, the kind that said she had waited many years for him to learn that lesson. Ares did not like the idea of hidden rules, but he liked being kept in the dark even less. He snarled at the stone and asked who built a prison that tested pride before power. Athena answered without looking away from the runes. The builders wanted a ruler who could listen, or the prison would punish anyone too stubborn to survive it. That answer made the danger clear. If Zeus chose wrong, the path below would turn against them all. The deepest chamber of the storm vault opened like a wound in the dark, and cold blue light spilled across the broken stone. Zeus stood at the front with Hera beside him, while Athena watched the runes. Ares planted his feet, Hermes leaned forward. Apollo held his harp tight, Demeter guarded the others, Iris scanned the path, and Vulcan spread his storm-marked wings. They had come too far to turn back now, and they all knew the same hard truth. If the prison failed here, the storm above Olympus would break loose into the world. Athena traced the storm seal runes and read them aloud, her calm voice steady even as the walls shook. The first covenant markings showed that the crown of first lightning had never been a prize. It had been a lock forged long ago to hold back the understorm, a buried force that fed on fear, pride, and open conflict. Zeus felt the meaning strike him hard. He had spent so long ruling from above that he had never seen the prison for what it truly was. Then the dark presence spoke from every crack in the chamber. The understorm did not want only freedom. It wanted the sky above Olympus because it believed the gods had taken power from the storm and left the world weak and divided. Its voice was cold but clear, and that made it worse. Before anyone could answer, the guardian construct rose from the floor in a blast of blue fire and broken metal, and the chamber became a battlefield. Ares charged first and held the line with raw force. Hermes moved through the shattered light to pull loose stones away from the seal. Apollo used his bright power to steady the cracks before they spread. Demeter called for calm, and the air around the seal began to settle. Vulcan slammed his storm-marked wings against the guardian construct and drove it back from the crown. Hera stood beside Zeus without fear, and that quiet strength gave him focus. He saw the final truth at last. The crown was not made to rule the storm, it was made to share its burden. Zeus raised the lightning spear, but he did not strike alone. He placed the crown of first lightning back into the central rune, and the entire vault answered with a deep, roaring pulse. The understorm screamed and collapsed inward, trapped by its own power, while the guardian construct went still and the seals sealed shut again. When the light faded, the chamber was quiet at last. Zeus looked at his allies, and for the first time in ages, his command felt less like a burden and more like trust. The storm had not been conquered, it had been understood, and that changed everything.